So let's grab a Cine camera actor, all right, and we're going to drag that into our scene. And we can, let's pilot this. So let's actually, in a basic way, map out our shot through our camera. And the first thing that I'm going to want to do actually is go in here and let's just change this to 16:9 DSLR and change our focal length to like 40. That's going to give us, something like this for our shot. So you can see that like this is actually really going to help us to be able to actually visualize how we want to compose our scene. Like that's going to give us something pretty interesting to look at. I'm actually pretty happy with this composition. You're probably going to want to play with things a little bit. You might want to slightly move certain things over, something like that could be nice. And then obviously we can have more stuff in the distance, but this is going to give us a good starting point here. Now we can see if our shot is going to look good, So we're going to have a few key compositions. This is what we want to keep in mind when we're working on a shot with camera movement, is that you're going to have certain points where you're going to want to hit certain compositions. This can be our first opening composition. Maybe we'd want to be closer on the feet or something like that. But this is going to be our opening composition right here. Then we're going to move over here. We're going to raise the camera up a little bit. We're going to follow these guys running. So that's going to be our subject. And then we're going to move over to this guy. And then he's going to be our subject. For this shot, now we can see that we're getting some interesting looking shapes in our sky. And we're actually, we don't have a boring frame. Like if we didn't have these elements, this frame would be very boring. He's going to be the main focus. He's going to move towards the camera, motion to people in the distance. And then we're going to move past him. And then now we have an interesting frame, but then we're going to pan up. We're going to see our ship come overhead, and that's going to be our subject. And then that's going to remain our subject throughout the rest of the shot. So we're going to then crane up into the sky, and we're going to see the ship fly into the distance. And now we have some nice, interesting buildings and also these elements in the sky. And we're probably going to want to add some mountains in the background. I'm not going to add those right now just because we kind of know that they're going to be there. So we're just going to have mountains over here. So that's our basic composition. So we actually kind of already have that mapped out pretty well. What I'm going to want to do actually is we're going to want to map out our key points. So what you can do, one option is to create 3 different cameras, put one at each point in that you're going to want to have a composition, or you can just add a camera animation and create a sequence right away. So let's just add a level sequence, and I'm going to make a new folder, and we're going to call it sequences. I'm going to go in here, and we're going to call this LS for level sequence, and then we're going to do underscore, and we're just going to call it LS underscore shot underscore 001. That's going to be our shot number. So this is going to be our asset name, and this is going to be our identifier. And we're going to hit save. We can take our Cine camera actor and we're just going to drag it into our sequence here. And we can see we have a camera cuts track created. If it doesn't automatically do that, make sure you add that. So we're just going to do a basic animation of the transform properties. I'm going to be working in 23.976 frames per second. So make sure you set your frame rate before you get started here. And then we're just going to do a basic transform animation for now, and then later on we're going to get into camera rig rail and some other setups like that. We're going to take our transform and we're going to just hit a quick keyframe there. We're going to go forward, and then we're going to go over here. We're going to go a little bit below eye level with our guy here. We're going to make a keyframe, and then we're going to go up and away from him. Pan up into the sky. And we're going to settle around here for now. Move that closer. So now we have a basic animation. And obviously that's really fast, so I think our pace is decent, but So basically what we're doing is essentially storyboarding our shot here, right? So we can expand our sequencer view by using these values right here. And what I'm doing here, you can manually move these keyframes around, but if you have the right pacing between the keyframes, you just want to expand the length of the shot total, you can just take this little handle right here and drag your camera track to be longer, and that's going to lengthen your shot while keeping the ratio of distances between the keyframes the same. So it's just going to increase the length of your shot, so slow it down. So here now we can see we're kind of getting the basic idea of what we want for this shot. So it's as simple as that. So we have our key shot positions here. I'm going to actually slightly set that, and I'm actually going to move these over slightly. Holding Shift and clicking to select multiple objects, and I'm going to move that over here, and then we're going to go back into our Cine Camera Actor. And if I want to be able to move objects from a certain point with it inside of my camera view, I can go here and I can do pivot and then set pivot offset here, snapped, and then I can actually move the object from my camera view. I can animate these guys to run as well, but I'm not going to do that right now. We're just getting the basic look to our scene. So here is our shot so far. So we're going to have our building here. We have this little hill. We have our guy and a ship flying overhead, which we can add that in later, but right now we're mostly focused on creating our environment. So we have our composition there. We have our composition there for our ship. And we have our composition here with our guy. And then we have our first composition with the feet. That's going to be good for now on blocking out our scene. And you can see that, you know, from a lot of angles, we've achieved a pretty nice looking composition here. I think that's going to be really cool. The main takeaway from this video is that when you're creating your compositions for your shot, especially if you have a moving camera, you're going to want to find each individual frame essentially that you're going to be settling on, and you're going to want to make sure that you have an interesting and well composed shot for each frame. You know, I kind of already had a good idea of how I wanted to do this, but you know, say I had started out and we didn't have these beams here, you know, like say these were not here. So let me just turn them off quick. With this shot, we have all this empty space up here, and that can be fine depending on what you want. Like maybe say we want to have something up in the sky over here, like maybe the sun is there or like a moon or some sort of other interesting element. But if this were our sky, this would be kind of boring. You know, we're missing something up in this area of the frame, and that's not to say that you always have to have something there, but our landscape is looking a bit empty. You know, like we will have mountains up here in the end, but adding elements, you know, that are going to enhance different frames in your shot can be a really good idea. Things that are going to add visual interest, geometric shapes like this can be a great way to add a lot of detail to your scene and get it looking really interesting. With that being said, we have kind of a basic blocking of this scene, and we can go ahead and move on to the next section.